Imagine a worker. A field is being harvested. He works through the day. His hands already tired. That man works until evening. It was not he who determined when to stop, but the day itself. When the sun set, the work ended too. The rule was simple. No one questioned it, because there was no other way to measure work. Then a clock entered the middle of life. It first appeared on a church tower, then in a town square, then on the wall of a factory. And for the first time, the beginning and end of work was separated from the sun. It was no longer the work that measured the day, it was the clock that measured the work. From the outside, this looks like a minor change, but in reality, it opened the door to a great turning point in the history of labor. Time began to be measured. Measured time was converted into money, and money, in the end, converted into power. How was labor measured before the clock? To answer this question, one must first forget what the word measure means. In the ancient world, labor was measured by task. The field was harvested, the work is done. The stone was carried, the work is done. Not how long it took, but what was done was what counted. This system had its own internal logic. If the worker worked faster, they went home early. If they worked slowly, they stayed late. Time had not the owner's rhythm, but the work's own rhythm. The result was visible, the process was not. But this system did not function at large scale. When tens, hundreds of people worked in one place, the task system broke down. Who did what? Who did how much? Who was supposed to do what? Tracking these became impossible. Control was not possible without measuring working time. In the Middle Ages, one of the first places to bring a serious system to this problem was monasteries. The monk's day was precisely divided. Prayer time, work time, meal time. Tools were needed to maintain this rhythm. Bells were rung, sundials were set up, water clocks flowed. These were not simply tools. They were the first real control over time. This order gradually spread beyond the walls of the monastery. Merchants saw how monks managed time and quickly understood one thing. Measuring time increases earnings. When time is precise, planning is also precise. When planning is precise, losses decrease and profit grows. The emergence of the mechanical clock in the 13th century accelerated the game even further. The sundial depended on clouds, the water clock on conditions. But the mechanical clock was different. I worked at night too, in the rain, in winter. This reliability elevated a simple instrument to another level. The clock was no longer simply showing time. It was becoming a mechanism that determined the rhythm of the economic system. The great trading cities immediately integrated these clocks into commercial life. The opening of the market was no longer the sun at a certain height, but the clock at a certain number. This standardization seems simple, but its consequence was great. Two different merchants in two different cities could meet at the same time. The Industrial Revolution sharply accelerated the speed of this process. With the emergence of the factory, time was converted into money for both the worker and the owner. The factory owner understood that every passing hour had value. The worker arriving late, leaving early, extending a break, all of these were measurable losses. The factory clock became the symbol of this understanding. A large clock hung at the entrance of every factory. The worker looked at it upon entering and looked again upon leaving. This act of looking itself said a great deal. Time was no longer personal, it was institutional. The owner's clock determined the worker's day. This change created a new tension. The worker said, "I did the work. Give me my due." The owner looked at it differently. You did not sell your work, you sold your time. And time is measured by the clock. The difference arising between these two ways of thinking became one of the greatest economic disputes of the 19th century. Because the issue was no longer simply work. It was whose time belonged to whom. Gradually, the hour-based payment system pushed aside the task-based payment. In factories, this transition was almost inevitable. But here a strange paradox emerged. Before, the faster the worker worked, the sooner they went home. That is, speed was in their favor. After the clock system arrived, however, the situation changed. Now working fast meant doing more work for the same wage. This logic turned motivation upside down. Owners quickly understood that simply paying by the hour did not increase productivity, and so they began searching for new ways. Thus, other systems were born. Piece rate payment, bonus systems, productivity bonuses, all had the same purpose: to fill the gap created by the hour system and to motivate people to work better once again. The legal system gradually took shape to regulate the clock economy. The limiting of working hours was at the center of the first workers' rights struggles. 14 hours, 12 hours, 10 hours, 8 hours. Behind these numbers stands decades of struggle. Every number was not a political decision but a financial one. The adoption of the 8-hour workday standard was not only a social victory, it was a rebuilding of the labor market. Now the price of time was precise for both worker and owner alike. Working more than 8 hours required additional payment. This standard laid the foundation for all modern labor contracts. The banking system benefited powerfully from the clock economy. Credit calculations were built on a time basis. Interest was calculated not by the hour, but by the day, the month, the year. But the precision of the clock added a new quality to these calculations. The day was no longer vague as before. It was an economic unit with a precise beginning and end. The insurance industry also drew great benefit from the precision of the clock. When it was known that a ship entered port at a precise hour, the start and end time of the insurance contract could also be clearly determined. This precision made risk assessment more reliable, and reliable assessment reduced costs. Stock exchanges became the most striking example of the clock economy. The opening and closing times of the exchange were precisely determined, and all transactions carried out within that period were recorded. These records became the most precise archives in financial history, because the clock stamped everything with a time mark. Today, in every field in which the financial system operates, the trace of the clock is present. Credit interest is calculated daily. Labor contracts are measured by the hour. Stock exchange transactions are recorded with millisecond precision. This precision of time is an inseparable part of the basic infrastructure of modern finance. Before the clock, time flowed. It was not measured. After the clock, time was measured. It acquired value. And once it acquired value, everything changed. The worker began to sell their time. The owner began to buy time. The market began to price time. This process continues today. The freelancer sells their hours. The consultant calculates their daily rate. The lawyer records their minutes. All of these calculations are the distant echo of that first chime struck by the first mechanical clock on a church tower millennia ago. When you look at your watch, do you see only the numbers? Or do you also see the entire story hidden behind them? If measuring time converted it into money, who determines the most valuable time today, do you think? If these kinds of questions are the sort that make you turn things over and over in your mind, how labor is valued, the history of time being converted into economic power, this channel is made for exactly that. Subscribe, and every week we look a little more deeply at the stories that shape the world you live in today. If there is a moment in financial history that has always caught your attention, share it in the comments. The next video will begin from where your question ends.